Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Astro Chat. Informal, lively podcast looking at the transits that are happening during the 2 weeks from new moon to full moon or full moon to new moon. Welcoming you in is Monica, Anne, and myself, Kimberly. Today we are looking at the full moon in January. If you are not on our YouTube channel and you're listening to us on one of our podcast channels, you might want to pull up the chart for yourself. It's January 17th. 2022, 11:49 p.m., and that's in Universal Time, Greenwich Mean Time. You can convert it to your own time if you like. Before we jump in, just a heads up that in our last episode, you might want to go back and review, we talked in depth about the Mercury Retrograde that we'll be experiencing this month. We talked about Jupiter's moving into Pisces, yay! And we mentioned that there's a heavy emphasis in Capricorn. We have quite a few planets. We have a stellium happening. So if any of those interest you, feel free to go back and listen to that podcast. I'm sure we'll touch on some of it today too. So let's dive in and start off talking about the full moon. All right, our full moon in the middle of January is the annual full moon in Cancer. And this is one of my favorite full moons of the year. There is something so nurturing about the full moon in Cancer. And I think for me, that's partly because it's after the holidays, the hubbub and the exhaustion and all of that gathering that's been very out in the public world. Now we get to nest at home. We get to make our houses homey. It's sort of home improvement, but not on that big structural scale that we can do in the summertime. It's more of the, let's go here in the States, we're doing clearance sales on all your whites and your towels and your sheets and how we're going to decorate and how do we create that nest, that sense of home. For me, that's a lot of what the energy of this moon in Cancer is about. Now, Cancer being a water sign, it can also be a time where there's a lot of emotional clearing. I know that many people that I have worked with talk about how they use January as sort of a reset. Not everyone does their New Year goals back on January 1st. They might actually be using the month of January to clear out, to release, to let go of any emotions that maybe came up during the holidays and all the family gatherings. So there can be emotions coming up to be released with this full moon as well. But for me, it's very much about the home and hominess. Do you guys have anything you want to share about this idea of that Cancer energy before we dive into what some of the aspects are happening?
I love what you said, that after the holidays you have that kind of release of emotions, and then full moon in Cancer comes in, because it's so true, isn't it? Some people don't see their family for months, and Christmas or Thanksgiving or any of the festivities around that time brings the family together, and it brings our conditioning. It brings up the structure of the family. The full moon is when the sun is in opposing sign of Capricorn. So the structure of the family, how do we fit in? Are we the black sheep of the family? Are we the favorite child? Are we the middle child? Where do we fit within our family? And those emotions are super highlighted over the holidays and the festive period. And then you have that release of the full moon. The full moon, for me, it's always the release of that energy. So there are 2 things that I tend to think about full moon. One is gratitude for the gifts of that archetype. So this is the time when I can take all that energy in me and express my gratitude for my family, for the people who are within me. And when I mean family, I don't just mean the biological family, I mean the tribe that we call family. So the people that really are there for you, that make you feel safe, that make you feel nourished, that make you feel comfortable and loved and cherished. And the full moon for me, it's that kind of release of the energy when I can express that love for my family. But full moon for me, it's also the time when the both luminaries are in opposing sign, so there is no place to hide. The whole thing is illuminated. There is no place for a shadow, so everything comes up to light, which means the themes of the family, of our conditioning and opposing Capricorn, the structure of that is coming up to the surface as well. And this full moon in January, on January 17, will be really interesting because on top of that electrifying full moon energy that we usually get at full moons, this will be like the full moon on steroids. We have moon and Mars out of bounds, and we also have Uranus in a mix. So we have extra energy within that mix that will create a proper release. It will create potentially a tension within our lives or within our, our own emotional selves that will look to release that energy. And how we release that, whether we will react or respond, that's up to us.
I love that. I love that idea too. Like you said, that at the full moon, our luminaries are opposite. And for me, there's something about a full moon that is both and. It is both culminating energy and releasing energy. We're at the midpoint of the lunar cycle. And so everything that's been happening for the last 2 weeks since the last new moon is growing and building and culminating. And in this moment, we release that and start to move into the waning light or the diminishing light of that moon. So I think there's a lot here about what do we want to nurture? At the January 1st, it's always about set the goal. It's very Capricornian. Set your New Year resolutions. And that's where our sun is in Capricorn. But now with the moon in Cancer, it's like, okay, the annual New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose weight. And then 2 weeks later, how am I going to do that? What gym what are the steps I'm going to take? But it can be so easy to focus on the steps and not think about, but what do I want to nurture? For me, this is like, maybe I wanted to lose weight because I care about my body and I want to nurture my health. Or maybe it was, I want to do that home decorating because I want to have a feeling of safety here at home, or comfort, or ease my anxiety. So what are we nurturing, I think, is so key to spending some time really opening up to. Anne, you have any thoughts about the Cancer energy before we jump into some of the aspects hitting this full moon?
Well, I think it's interesting also because we had this stellium in Capricorn this month. And I feel that sometimes when there's really intense energy or a lot of planets in one sign, they kind of flip over to the opposite sign. So we get more of that Cancer energy at the same time. And also I think it's interesting because, like you said, we had a very strong Capricornian opening of this year, setting goals, being determined of where to go. And through this full moon, maybe we need to tap into the emotional side of it, really, to get into, are we there emotionally also with all these things that we're going to achieve? So yeah, it's really also a lot of intensive energy here. That's I don't think it's going to be a non-exciting time. It's also going to be changes going on under the surface.
I like that you both mentioned the tapping into the emotions, because this is one thing that helps when you set the goal. When you set the goal and the goal is completely uninspiring, you're not going to reach it. Let's not kid ourselves. If you set the goal and it's like, I want to do whatever by this time, and you feel like about it, that goal is not going to be achieved no matter what. The goals, you have to feel them. You really have to tap into that emotional body, to feel that excitement, like, oh my God, when I achieve this goal, whatever that is, I will feel so calm, or I will feel at peace, I will feel excited, or I will feel so fit, or I will feel so, whatever that is, you really have to lean into that feeling, and that energy will propel that goal. So I'm really glad that you mentioned the feeling element of this. I also think that there is an element of conditioning with the Cancer and Capricorn axis. So again, we love our families, we're brought up by our families. However, there's also element of being conditioned by our family. And it's a huge element of our life, and a huge unconscious driving force in our lives. And at the time of a full moon, that can come up to the surface as well. So the conditioning that we receive from our family, from our religion, from our culture or country that we grew up in, that is our operating system. That is the software that kind of runs and makes the decision for us when we're in that unconscious state. And it's difficult to first notice that it's operating, and second to change that. But full moon is the moment when we actually can observe. So if we not going to be swept on that full moon kind of heightened energy, but actually allowing ourselves to observe what's coming up to the surface, what conditioning maybe it's triggered. I mean, I don't know a person who is not triggered being surrounded by a family over holidays. There's always something that comes up for good and for bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Being surrounded by family, or even not being surrounded by family, that is a trigger in itself. So what's coming up, around that full moon for you? What conditioning is coming to the surface? What feelings of not being nourished or not being loved are triggered, and how can you respond to that? I think that's the key as well. And I will maybe take us into the aspects as well now. We have the moon being out of bound, and we have Mars being out of bound at the time of this full moon. And out of bound planets are the planets that going a little bit beyond the norms dedicated by our ecliptic, which means they are working a little bit outside of what's expected. I'm not a expert on out of bounds, but I love looking and getting that flavor whenever new moon or full moon's happening and the planets are doing something unusual. Because when the planet is out of bounds, it manifests the same energy. So it's the same moon, it's the same Mars, it's the same moon or Mars energy, but it's manifested slightly differently. So we all have our preconception about how moon or Mars should manifest and how those energies should manifest within the society. And Mars goes, hell no, I'll do something else. And moon will do the same thing. So this will be a full moon where our will and our nurturing will maybe want something else. We might set our boundaries around full moon and around our family and all the stuff that's coming up. Maybe we'll set up our boundaries and be assertive in a way that we've never been before. We might feel and sense things, moon, in a way that we haven't done before. There might be feeling this kind of idea of out of the box or out of the blue things coming into our lives, and feeling or sensing things that we haven't before. And I think this is an interesting full moon to lean into that, bearing in mind and using as much mindfulness and awareness as we can master to observe those energies and play with them instead of being pulled by them into reactionary way.
That idea of the new moon being pulling in that Pluto. I've been sitting on my hands because I want to talk about that. So just to recap, I'm noticing that we're talking, and of course, we're all the three of us here are looking at the chart. So for those of you who are listening, and in case you don't have a printed chart handy, we're talking about the Full moon is at 27 degrees 50 minutes of Cancer, opposite the sun at obviously 27 degrees 50 minutes of Capricorn. Our Mars, that is also out of bounds like that moon, is at 25 degrees of Sagittarius, in case that is something important for you in your chart. And we also have a exciting, and of course I use the term exciting loosely, exciting aspect of the sun conjunct Pluto. Pluto's at 26 Capricorn, the sun's at 27. They're less than a minute apart. I kind of feel like, well, we've already laid the groundwork of there's some volatility with the moon and Mars being out of bounds. There's some emotion with the moon out of bounds and then the moon in Cancer. And so now here's yet another layer. Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, transformation. I think for me, when I look at this, it's about looking at your shadow. That's what I keep going to, because as Monica was mentioning earlier, you know, a lot of things are emotional and what needs to be released and what has come up with family and the conditioning. And for me, one of my biggest shadows has to do a lot with family conditioning, you know, things that I have been programmed of, this is my role. And if I'm spending a lot of time around the holidays with family, I can stop being who I am 24/7 and start being that person that I'm supposed to be in that unit. You know, that's my role, my job, that Capricorn energy of labels. It's so easy for me to just get kind of hooked into that. Give me a job to do. I now have a role and suddenly I'm identifying with that. So for me, that's always an area of shadow. And I feel like whenever Pluto's involved, it's impossible to not, to some degree, look at our shadows. So perhaps here it's what's the emotional anchor that is holding us back from moving forward? There's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of action to take with those out of bounds planets, but okay, why have I not taken this action sooner? What is it that's holding me back? What is my emotional shadow? What is that thing acting like an anchor, like a dead weight that I need to free myself from so I can move forward into 2022 with the energy and the enthusiasm and the optimism that I want? But I could talk all day about Pluto. What do you guys think about the sun conjunct Pluto, or are there other aspects that you want to bring us into?
I mean, what I love about astrology is that whenever we look at the chart, is that one aspect and then another create a layer of the same story. So it's very rare when I look at the chart and I see, okay, there are 2 or 3 different stories going on. Most of the time it's just another angle, just another layer to that story. And like we were saying, full moons already bringing that kind of conditioning to the surface and highlights the stuff around family and the structure of the family, or the structure of not having family. So when we talk about that, it's not just you know, your mom and dad and that kind of, so to speak, traditional way of looking at this is the any structure that you had or didn't have. Not having parents, it's still a way of conditioning and influencing you and your life. So this will all come to life. And like Kimberly said, when we actually are around holidays, we fit into some kind of a family mold, or a lack of that family mold as well. And we're being pulled by that traditional Capricornian structure that society or our culture tells us there should be one. And I feel like the Pluto is actually, this time, the Pluto is actually trying to get us deeper. It's trying to get us into the underworld, into that kind of really deep and shameful and maybe painful part of our foundation that we grew up with, and ask the questions. I don't want to go too much into Venus retrograde, because we've mentioned Venus retrograde in our previous episode. But on top of that, we also have Venus being retrograde, taking us into that journey of values and re-evaluating what it is to have structure, to have mastery, to be an adult, to be responsible, to take accountability. So I feel like that Pluto with Sun, especially around the time of that full moon, and that Venus that is still on that journey, which we will be mentioning later, it's all asking us to look deeper into what are our structures that we grew up with, how do they condition our life? What is that unconscious software that we're running in our head, in our subconscious, that has an impact on our life, on our relationships, on our work? And how can we go through the transformation, very Plutonian, to transform those structures, achieve mastery, and become adult, become responsible? And when I mean adult, I don't mean you have to turn 18. There are people in their 50s that, you know, they're yet to become an adult. So the age has nothing to do with that. It's more of a, do I take responsibility for my actions? Do I take accountability for what I do in life and how I want to live my life, and how I can change the structure in my life that do not suit me, and build something that is stable, that is foundation for the family, the nurturing, the loving, homely home that I want to create. And again, home in that kind of metaphorical sense, not necessarily in four walls and a building, but what can I do to create that, take accountability for that, take responsibility for that, to create something that does nurture me. And on top of that, sorry, just to throw another aspect, we have Uranus that is stationing direct, and the Uranus is stationing direct at 10 degrees of Taurus at the time of the full moon, bringing yet another layer of that unexpected. So that might be the full moon where we will get insight into why we always the same way, or why we always have the same type of relationship, or think the same way, or follow the same pattern. So we might get, through Uranus, we might get that kind of insight. It's like, aha, this is what it is, because I've always done that because my mom taught me that, or you know, I've learned that through the culture that I grew up, or I've learned that through school that I went to. And we might get that again, lightning fast downloads, insights, out of the blue messages, however we want to think about it, into what it means to have a structure, to be responsible, and to have family and nurturing environment around us.
Yeah, and I love the aspects that Uranus is making, because at the same time as our full moon is making a trine to that Venus that Monica was mentioning, right? So all of this really excitement and change about what's going on that very earthy plane. What am I materializing? What am I creating? What is the abundance? But at the same time, or I should say, and at the same time, squaring Saturn and Mercury in Aquarius, you know, fixed to fixed signs. So I get this sense that just as things may be exciting and that lightning fast that Monica was saying, it may not be something I'm welcoming, right? There could be some resistance. I find whenever the squares are in the fixed signs, it's always resistance that comes up first. And then, so aha moment, what do I need to change, right? What do I need to change about the way I am doing my adulting or not? What are the things I'm taking responsibility for? Where am I not taking responsibility for my own happiness? I think is a question that I will be sitting with a lot.
That's a beautiful question. Please repeat that, because that's a pearl.
Really? Thanks. Yeah.
I like that.
Where am I taking responsibility for my happiness, and where am I not? I think that's so important to recognize that with Saturn, it isn't just about, I mean, because come on, Saturn gets a bad rap, right? It's more work, and it's more labor, and it's more obstacles, and it may be all those things, but also Saturn wants us to mature, to develop. To me, Saturn is like the ancient wise crone energy. It's like, you know, if you go through trial after trial, you're going to learn. So let's learn. Something needs to change. In order for it to change, where are you going to take responsibility to be that change, to be the spark to start that change? So yeah, I think it can be very interesting, even though it may be some tension.
Yeah.
And I'm doing all the talking. What do you think?
Sorry, can I just jump in quickly?
Yeah.
It just feels like a accumulation of that Saturn-Uranus square. So in 2021, we had 3 exact hits of Saturn and Uranus meeting in combination, in intense combination of square. But it's still going to happen this year. Not exact, but it's still there. It's still lingering. It's still asking the same questions. And at this full moon, having this square activated by Mercury, and having Uranus being stationary, again, that energy of Saturn, Uranus asking those questions about structure and something new is like highlighted, that full moon is highlighting, it brings the energy and brings the light into those questions. So it's going to be really unusual, I feel, full moon, very electrifying, very out of bounds, out of the box, the insight, and like Kimberly said, not necessarily comfortable, but hey, adulting is not comfortable. That's what I've learned. Adulting is not necessarily comfortable, but it's needed to take that responsibility for our own happiness. And I think that's a lovely question that Kimberly, you said, and I will be journaling on that for sure around the full moon. Sorry, Anne, I jump in.
It's no problem. There's so many things in this chart, so it's really hard to know how to focus on one thing without focusing on everything, because there's so many special aspects of planets moving different directions and nodes changing signs, and it's a lot of stuff. So I also think that it's a bit more important or loaded energy because of all these stationary planets we have. The shift in energy going forward or going retrograde that we have in this chart is also quite special. You don't see it in every new moon or full moon. So this is also going to be important for feeling like what kind of direction you need to go, or you need to make some kind of decision to yourself that what do I want to do about this. We had retrograde Venus already with Pluto in December around Christmas time, and there's some themes from here I think that will be still ongoing during this month and maybe also a bit further. So Pluto coming together with the Sun at the same time as Mars is hiding away from the Sun, being like out of bounds, doing what he wants to do, and also giving us possibility to move in directions that we maybe not even thought was possible, that you mentioned, Monica, that we can think outside the box and we can be a genius in a way with the steps we want to take and how we're going to use this energy. So it's an interesting time to make use of these energies.
You did mention the planets changing direction. So in the next 2 weeks, obviously the Uranus will be changing direction, and Venus, and Uranus stationing, just to recap on that, that is a huge shift of energy. Any planet that changes direction, stops and then move forward, or stops and then move backwards, create that vortex of energy. And those moments, those days, where the planet stops, it's like the focus is there because the planet doesn't move, which means that one point in our chart, in our life, gets super concentrated dose of energy. Uranus stationary, that's a big shift in energy of liberation, rebellion, expression, insight. This is the energy that we can use to break through old pattern of thinkings, old patterns of doing things, to get insight into what really drives us and what values are directing our lives. Uranus is in Taurus, so what values, what makes us safe, and why do we feel safe? And when Uranus comes in and shake things up, and the stationary direct will definitely shake things up around that full moon, again, we can ask ourselves a question. When the ground underneath my feet is shaky, what makes me feel safe? What makes me feel comfortable? What makes me follow my values when I feel like I am in a quicksand place? So this is definitely the energy of the stationary Uranus. And I know, Anne, you wanted to mention the stationary Venus.
Yeah, I think that the stationary Venus, even it's gonna stop to be in full retrograde this month on the 25th, it's still gonna be in the shadow phase. It's gonna go forward through the same degrees where it's been retrograding, which means that we're going to have a post-shadow period, as we call it, after the retrograde period. And this means that there's still some things that are going to be accurate with this Venus until the end of February. So even if it might be a kind of culmination of retrograde Venus, relationship themes, values, thinking about what we value in ourselves, why do we do it, also tapping in on the structure, the tradition that made us the way we are. So this might be an important phase, a month for this theme, but it will still be continuing for some time.
Yeah. And the next shift that's happening are the nodes.
Before we jump into the nodes, and I know we're talking a lot, but there's just so much happening in this chart, right? I just wanted to throw in one more thing about that Uranus before we move into talking about the nodes. So for me, Uranus is always about how am I going to achieve freedom? You know, I have to find freedom for my authentic self. I have to bring authenticity forward somewhere, somehow. I need to have more of that sense. And so, you know, I'm just looking at this and it's staying with me that, you know, it went retrograde back in August, middle August of 2021. So I guess I would be asking the question, if you're looking at your own chart and how this is hitting the Taurus in your natal chart, you know, what has been going on for the last, what is that, 6 months, 7 months? What's been going on since the middle of August where you recognize or you have that gut feeling something needs to change, but I'm afraid to make that change. I'm resisting that change. I don't want to make that change. That Taurus energy is telling me to hold on. It's not safe to make that change, but yet you know that you have to make that change. That change is about freedom. And so I feel like even though this can seem like very large energy, it's not new. It's energy that each of us has been sitting with and internally during this retrograde, these months and months of it, processing. So it's sort of that now's the time to take action, I think, based on what we've already been sitting with and mulling over. It's just about being a little more conscious. Thanks for letting me throw that in. I just had that burning desire to mention that. Sorry, go ahead, Anne. Take us into the nodes.
Oh, okay, the nodes, they're also stationary directed at this moment. So highlighting the direction we are going also on a collective basis at this time, and nodes are, and they are going to change into other signs right now. So they're going to change into Taurus and Scorpio, fixed signs. So to think about what this could mean, the North Node in Taurus has been before, like 2003, 2004, times when there have been big changes also in the world, like in the world economy, in how we structure the world. For the last time, 2003-4 was the economical situation when the euro was a new currency that started to be stabilized, and that changed a lot in Europe. So it's kind of big changes that's taking place. And also, of course, after this situation we have been in with the pandemic, we need to stabilize the economy. We need to see how we're going to get things going again in society, how we're going to get a feeling of stability. The South Node is in Scorpio. It's in an emotional sign, a sign that brings up a lot of transformation and a lot of feelings that we have processing what has been happening the last years. It's a lot. And that's also good to think of, because I associate Scorpio and the planet Pluto with letting go of things, with cleaning up stuff we don't need anymore, and making room for new energy, my English is not so good today, new ways of seeing life, new opportunities, a new direction, like also Uranus is talking about right now. So I think that it's important to try to not go back too much into what has been, and go forward and try to make it practical, to make the things we can see and the things we can do with our hands is important for the future. What do you think about it?
It's so true.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, it really is. I would just say that if you want to know on a personal level what the nodes might mean for you, it might be good to look back into 19th of November. That's when we had our Scorpio eclipse, and that was the first Scorpio eclipse and a first flavor of what this transit will bring. So the nodes will move into Taurus and Scorpio, like Anne said, and they will be there until June 2023. So quite a few months. But we already had a little taste or taster of what this energy will bring into our personal lives on the 19th of November when we had our Scorpio eclipse. So if you can think back to that time and see any themes coming up for you, any special events that happened, any people that came or went from your life, that is a good indication of the next months. So I always look. This is me in astrology. My practical approach to a sign, especially when they are retrograding and they like dip into the sign and then they go back again into the previous sign. Or with the nodes when the first eclipse starts. This for me is like a little taste of what that planet or what those nodes will bring in the next few months. And sometimes nothing happens, we don't have sensitive points everywhere in our charts, but we all have some sensitive points somewhere in the charts. So for some people, Scorpio, Taurus will be incredibly sensitive because they have planets or angles in that signs. For some people, it might not be incredibly transformational because that's not their chart, that's not their makeup. But if you felt something, or if there are any interesting themes that came up around mid-November, you better be prepared for the next few months to come.
Absolutely. Anything else y'all want to share about the nodes, about this Taurus energy, Scorpio energy? Of course, we'll be talking about it in the months ahead, I'm sure, especially when we get into eclipse seasons.
Yeah, I have so much to say, but I think Anne gave a great overview of what the Scorpio and Taurus will bring. Yeah, we'll be definitely talking about eclipse season, which starts in April.
All right, well then let's move into some of the ingresses. We have some planets changing signs that we might want to mention as we wrap up this month. So of course, the first one to mention is our solar change. The sun will be moving into Aquarius. That'll be on the 20th here. Oh, I see a hand up. What's up, Monica?
Oh no, I'm just like, woohoo!
Woohoo!
Sun in
Yay,
Aquarius.
Team Aquarius! Solar return time.
Happy birthday to all Aquarians.
We're also going to talk a bit about Mars moving into Capricorn on the 24th. It'll be staying there until March. And then we might just touch on lovely Mercury during its retrograde. It's going to ingress back into Capricorn. So let's start off with the sun. Sun in Aquarius. I love Sun in Aquarius. The fact that my midheaven's Aquarius could have something to do with this, I don't know, but I love when the sun is in Aquarius. This is a time for me where, we really get to shake off that sense of, well, okay, here in the United States, since I'm talking to people in England and Finland, let me be clear, I'm sure over there you're not shaking off the winter doldrums. But here in Texas, we have a very short winter season. So when the sun's in Aquarius, we're really shaking that off. There's something about getting in touch with, what do I want to be doing? What are my priorities about? Where do I want to put my time, my talents, my treasure? What is my authentic self yearning to do? Who are the people I want to be connecting with? Like there's this like really, for me, strong sense of conscious awareness that the transiting sun always brings. It's like a magnet to, where do I want to be putting my energy? And streamlining and cutting away the things that don't meet those criteria. I often find that for me, when the sun goes into Aquarius is often when I kind of do a big, if I'm going to make all the stuff we've already talked about, if I'm going to make all these January dreams that I have for the coming year true, I got to do some paring down. I got to get in touch with what my priorities are. And so for me, there's sort of this letting go of a lot so that I can get very clear with my mind and my actions. I'm saying this as I'm looking on Zoom at an Aquarian who's staring at me. So I'm real curious to hear from Monica, like any thoughts about where I might be hitting the mark and what I'm forgetting to mention.
I mean, I love that you're so excited about Aquarian season, because like I said, I am biased. Having Sun in Aquarius, I am absolutely biased about the season. But I love what you mentioned about this kind of freshness energy. And it's not just Texas. Yes, in Finland and in Northern Europe, we still have a lot of darkness and a lot of and quite a few days of winter still to go. However, what happens in Aquarius season is Festival of Imbolc, Festival of Light. And this is really the festival in the Northern Hemisphere when we physically can see the day getting longer. So we know that at the winter solstice, that's the shortest day and the longest night. And since then, the light grows. But we don't really notice that. It only grows by a few minutes a day. So you don't actually see that physically until around end of January, beginning of February, when you actually do notice that that light, that sun shines above the horizon a little bit longer than it did in the previous week. And that's when we celebrate the Festival of Imbolc, which personally to me is incredibly important. But it is that kind of idea of hope, of emergence, of coming out of long winter months, especially like I said, in the Northern Hemisphere, and breaking through. And that kind of vision of a little snowdrop, little tiny, delicate snowdrop breaking through a frozen ground and breaking through some of the snow still on the ground to flower. That for me is incredible. And that's for me is Aquarian energy, breaking through frozen ground, breaking through frozen and fossilized Capricornian stuff. We're coming out of the Capricornian season, and then it's Aquarius. What do we need to break through to grow, to bring new hope, new light, freshness? I always kind of warn people, it's very easy to look at Aquarian and that modern ruler of Uranus and think about Aquarian as a rebel, but traditionally Aquarians are ruled by Saturn. Aquarius and Capricorns are ruled by Saturn. So it's not about breaking a rule for the sake of breaking the rule. It's breaking the rule that do not serve us anymore. It's the breaking the rule that are so fossilized that keeps us locked and rigid and very kind of stubborn. Those rules need to be broken, or those structures need to be broken because they don't serve us anymore. And Aquarius energy is very much like, okay, what structure do I need to support something fresh and something new, and what structures just need to go? So for me, that again, it's the birthday. So happy birthday to all my fellow Aquarians. It's the time when I celebrate. So I pretty much celebrate a whole month, beginning with the Imbolc and then going all the way until end of Aquarian season. But it is that freshness of looking at the world that emerging from darkness and having the hope that warmer days are ahead. And on personal level, you're coming out from that place of dreaming and hibernating and being focused on dreaming new dreams and envisioning the year ahead, to actually now having hope that that dream can come true, that you can put the structure and actually go for it.
Gorgeous.
But I can talk about Aquarius for hours. So, any thoughts?
What's more to say, I mean, with that introduction? I thought about the light here. I mean, where I live, we have a lot of snow and ice. And when the light comes back in January, you have sunglasses, because then it's very light when the light is hitting the ice and the snow. And that's a different kind of light. And you actually get very good sunburn when you're out on the ice in the winter. So Aquarius brings light, yeah.
Yeah. And it brings community, right? I mean, there's something about whether you're thinking of it from the astrology perspective of we're coming out of Capricorn or just general life, like there's something about, well, here we have Thanksgiving, we have Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. There's all this holiday season that tends to pull people towards either their family or their work or very personal things. I think in more traditional ancient times, it was sort of that it's cold, so let's go inside, let's hibernate. But there's something about in February, it's time to come out. It's time to connect, and it's time to reestablish those friendships, do the meetups. I know here February is always full of, okay, let's find out what you've been doing now that we have time to actually socialize again, but not just socialize. It's connecting with people that share my priorities, that share my viewpoints. That this is when a lot of the organizations will start to do their, let's get together and clear the land for the next festival that's happening in the summer. Let's start doing the work of making this world a better place, or making our group a stronger group, or moving forward. And I'm involved in a lot of groups, and there's a lot of February seems to be the kickoff for what are we doing this year? What do we want to have in the summer? Let's start working on it now together. There's this togetherness, this unity. I think Monica said earlier when we were talking about some of the other aspects about tribe. And to me, that's very Aquarian. Like, let's get together with our tribe of people who share. I've been with my family. Now it's time to be with my tribe who shares my values, my viewpoints. And maybe that's
like
why
an antidote, isn't it? The Aquarius and the Capricorn, it's like an antidote.
Yeah.
In Capricorn season, we are very much into the old structures and the structures that kind of were around when we were born, right? And then the new season starts, new year starts, and we're moving on to be with the structures that we create for ourselves, like with the tribes of people that we chose. And I love that Aquarian symbol is those two waves, because I always feel that Aquarius groups are the people who vibe in the same way, who are on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
So that kind of like little wave that is Aquarian symbol, I think about it as like a radio wave, or those people who are on the same wavelength that you are, that you want to be around. And it's like an antidote to everything that the family structure, or the structures that we have there during the holiday season, is pulling us back. So
yeah.
So maybe that's why I like in Vulcan Aquarius season so much. Yeah. Probably learned too much about me in this episode.
And so let's talk about Mars too. We have Mars moving into Capricorn on the 24th of January. It'll be there until early March. This is a 2-year cycle. So, we've had it 2 years, about approximately, give or take, depending on the retrogrades. We had it 2 years ago. We'll have it 2 years from now. I personally struggle when Mars is in Capricorn, and people around me struggle. There's something about that desire that Mars has to take action. Let's do it now. Let's move forward. Let's be impulsive. And then Capricorn throwing on the brakes, saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. Have we thought it through? Do we have the backup plan? And so there, for me, I think of this energy as sort of that 2 steps forward, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. You're still a step ahead, but it's very frustrating. Things are not going either in the timing that we want or the pace that we want. Often there's a lot of needing to take care of the, going through the checklist, taking care of the checks and balances, being responsible enough to get everything ready before we take action. That can take some of the fun. I mean, Mars has been in a lovely fire sign here in Sagittarius for a while. We've had this lovely energy of, if I can dream it, I can do it, let's go. And now, as we mentioned, a lot of planets in Capricorn, Mars is going to join that. So that personal drive of, I just want to do it, we may feel the obstacles, is my sense of this. What do you guys think?
It seems very ambitious, but I also think about Mars being like out of bound, kind of going wild in Sagittarius, and then it's going to go into Capricorn and be like very ambitious, and maybe also hit some borders with those wild dreams and what can actually be done in reality. So that might be quite frustrating maybe too. But with Mars in that sign, I think that you can also try to use the energy to manifest those goals you have and you have put, because it seemed to be a very ambitious beginning of this year. and might be a lot of things that needs to be done. So I hope that's possible with that Mars. What do you say, Monica?
I like what you said, Kimberly, about Mars in Capricorn might feel difficult, and I think it's to do again with what we mentioned earlier, with the adulting, with taking responsibility and accountability for our action. Mars is very active, very visceral, very intuitive energy. This is the energy of a 2-year-old saying no and having a temper tantrum. And that energy then goes into Capricorn when there are structures, when then you have to take responsibility for something. And that kind of no and throwing a tantrum is not going to take us anywhere in Capricorn. So there are two things that I see always Mars in Capricorn. One is if we can use the structure and put that energy into mastering something. I don't know, going to the gym and doing a body workout every day and being consistent, using that Saturn, being consistent with that, we can really put that Martian energy into work and come out of that season looking great, or having going into competition, with the bodybuilding competition or something like that, or we can be extremely frustrated because we can see limitations everywhere. So those are the two ways that I feel like Mars in Capricorn can go. Either we have all that energy and we feel a little bit like that 2-year-old where we want to say no and assert our boundaries and be assertive and do things our way and go maybe too quick or too forward or too pushy. And there are energies and boundaries and structures and people telling us, no, this is not the way forward. No, this is not the way we like it here. No, this is not the way you should behave. And that can create a lot of tension and a lot of frustration, a lot of internal, energy that is blocked and doesn't have anywhere else to go. Or we can use the Saturnian and Capricornian structure and say, okay, where can I have that laser focus and I can use that extra Martian energy to put that in? What is the project that I can do? Maybe I need to rebuild my freaking shed, and I can literally just do that, use that Mars energy to create a structure in my back garden, and that then I can use it in a more constructive way that I would otherwise. But there are two ways we can put that energy into use if we can take responsibility and accountability for that energy, or if you would just want to release that energy and create a chaos, it's not going to look good or feel good. So those are my two feelings about Mars in Capricorn. That's and also great. With so much Capricornian energy, because Mars will be in Capricorn at the same time where Venus and Pluto and Mercury will be there will be a lot of opposition to that energy. So there will be a lot of like, I want to do, and then the Mercury, Pluto, and Venus will be saying, well, no, those are the boundaries. Those are the values of Capricorn. Those are the deep dives of Pluto in Capricorn, and blocking that energy.
Yeah. 3 things hit me that are positive about this, even though, as I said, I have some reservations about how well I'll work with this transit. But there's 3 things that are really positive. One is what you mentioned already. Mars coming in to Capricorn when we have so many planets in Capricorn means that we're going to have the energy. I mean, with all this Capricorn energy this particular year, I get the sense that it's going to be very easy for people to set goals for themselves that may not be realistic, or the time frame for it may not be realistic, right? Or that they're overwhelming themselves, like, setting the bar too high instead of taking things step by step, but wanting to accomplish everything and everything at once. Kind of makes sense after 2 years of a lot of turmoil, and I'll just leave, COVID life there. But after those 2 years, there's a lot I want to do. There's a lot of time I want to make up for. There's a lot that needs to happen. So I feel like perhaps we may overburden ourselves with too many tasks or have a lot of obstacles we need to overcome to be successful. Mars is going to give us the energy to do it. Okay, I've put a lot of things on my plate, but I have the energy now to roll up my sleeves and make it happen. Because with Mars comes energy and fortitude, and I'm going to make it happen. If I can wrap my head around, my emotions around, I'm willing to do it. The other thing is, again, going back to all this Capricorn energy, we may be wanting to do everything, but at some point, goals have to have a bit, I believe, of inspiration. A goal that is all about what I must do without some kernel of what I desire is setting ourselves up for failure before we begin. It's creating a feeling of overwhelm. It's setting us up for falling in a month when we hit Pisces season. So with Mars coming in, I'm wondering if this is yet one more cycle, one more transit saying, okay, you set some really good, wonderful goals. Now let's go back and review. I get the sense that January, the entire month is like, raise the bar, now let's scale it back. Now raise the bar, now scale it back. Now raise the bar, now go for it. Like, realism is about what I desire and what I can do and what I must do, and how do we bridge those? So I kind of feel like there can be some really good things, even though there may be moments of, as you said, 2-year-old temper tantrum, I don't like this. And then our last thing to note, unless you all want to say something else about Mars, our last thing to note is that we are still in Mercury retrograde season. And so on the 26th, Mercury, while it's retrograding, will leave Aquarius and go back into Capricorn. So this, we talked about a lot last time, but to kind of stimulate your memory, as it were, we were looking back on the retrograde began back on the 13th. So we haven't been in it very long. Pre-shadow, of course, it would have been longer. And we're going to see that Mercury is going to stay retrograde. It's going to stay going backwards in Capricorn until February 4th, when it will leave at 24 degrees Capricorn. But really, we have until February 24th before we're out of that post-shadow that we mentioned earlier, like with Venus. Mercury also has its pre-post shadow. So we're kind of in the thick of it, the way I look at it. And I think that if you listen to the last podcast, it'll give you some great ideas. I think we had some practical advice on how to work with this. But basically, our mind is being pulled back from Aquarian, what I want, what I value, the freedom, all those things we mentioned that are so Aquarian, the priorities, the seeing the light, the inspirational breakthroughs and ahas. We're being pulled back momentarily into the, okay, but how do I make that happen? Back into practical Capricorn. Okay, I have to get my mind on board with what are the steps to reaching those visions that Aquarius brought. Y'all have any final thoughts either on Mercury or anything else that we've talked about?
This might be a good time. Sorry,
that's okay. Go on.
I just thought about Mercury going back into Capricorn, that this might correlate with what you said earlier about going and revisiting earlier plans and reality checking them. Is there something I already thought I would do that I can take forward, or should I leave it and go into something, a new direction? So that might be the time to do that and really examine if there's something you can use from before, or if it's good to leave like that.
Yeah. And maybe just we've mentioned that the previous episode, but again, just a reminder to all of us, myself included, Mars is not doing things to us. He's not going, and annoying us or delaying us or breaking things around us to cause chaos. If things are like that happening, then maybe a good approach, if we can, is to think, why is this happening for me? Why I keep breaking things around me? Am I rushing too much? Am I, is my mind somewhere else and I'm not being fully present? And maybe that's why the little accidents are happening. Am I sending that contract too quickly and I haven't read it fully, or I haven't reread it before signing? So Mars is trying to pull us back and get our attention directed to rethinking, reevaluating, restructuring things in our lives. And as frustrating as Mercury, as frustrating as Mercury retrograde can be, and we've all had our share of frustrations, I'm sure. Just trying to use, again, a bit of awareness and a bit of mindful approach to this cycle and say, okay, I have to go back the same road or the same theme or the same 3 times, when Mercury goes forward, then when it's moving backwards, and then when it's going to move forward over the same ground again. What is it that I need to pay attention? What area of life is Mercury going? Look at the house in your horoscope that Mercury is transiting. That will give you an idea of the themes in your life coming up to the surface, or just observe your life and see where is your attention directed, and just pay attention to that. So that's all I would say about Mercury retrograde. And I think we're actually at the end of our episode, where we share practical tips. So I just shared a bit of a practical tip about Mercury, but I'd like to share as well about the full moon. As mentioned, this full moon has incredible energy. Full moon usually brings a lot of energy to the surface, but with those transits, with the planets out of bounds, with Uranus being involved and stationary, this will be a huge full moon energy. So again, it's easier said than done, but if we can try and bring that mindful awareness to our lives and allow the unexpected to happen, allow the out of box feelings, out of the blue ideas, out of the usual approach or assertiveness, if we allow something like that to unfold in our lives and observe, we might learn something new, or we might try something new. This allowing space for new insights, for feeling maybe things that we haven't felt before, and just allowing space for those feelings to come up without judgment, without straight away labeling them or straight away trying to understand them, just allowing for the full moon to bring things up that might be shocking, that might be unexpected, that might be insightful, that might be exciting, and just allowing them to happen without the idea of needing to control or think or label them. And again, I'm not advertising for things to allow to happen and not think about the consequences. That's not what I'm trying to advocate for, but just allowing for a new experience to emerge within our lives, and be aware of that. Be aware that something new and exciting might be happening, and create a space for that to emerge without squashing it before it actually has time to fully be present. So that's something that I will be doing around the full moon, and I'll be journaling on those feelings or those emotions or those energies around the time of full moon, just to see what's happening, what is the luminaries highlighting in my life at the time of that full moon. Any practical tips from you ladies?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to be doing some very intentional work with that sun's ingress into Aquarius. For me, this is a time to really do some visioning for yourself. So we talk a lot about Aquarius, the sun in Aquarius being about priorities, being about focusing on your time, your talent, your treasures, how I was taught. I like to think about, where does my time, my energies, my talents, my actions that I'm taking, the money that I give and donate, where does it go? A lot of times when we do goal setting, which is what happens during Capricorn season, there's a lot of, okay, come up with your goal and then break it down into action steps, and then let's make it happen. When the sun enters Aquarius, I like to pause for a moment and kind of backwards engineer that. In other words, when the sun is in Aquarius, I like to take that day and to sit down and say, where does all my time, energy go? So I make a list of, where does most of my time go to? Categorize it. I'm a Virgo. I make lists. where does it go in terms of categories? What takes my energy? Whether I'm giving it time or it's spinning in the back of my mind, what takes my energy and what takes my money, my resources. Once I have this big flow chart, I break that into lists and come up with, what are the top 5 things? There's overlap. Where does my time and my energy and my money go? And okay, look at that list of 5 things now, put that aside. Now do the visioning of what are the top 5 things I want to be giving my time and my energy and my money to. The challenge is, now that I have these 2 lists, how do they match up or how do they not? I think that when the sun enters Aquarius is when I get to decide, all of us get to decide, this is my Capricornian goal, plan for the year. Now my Aquarius side gets to say, they're both ruled by Saturn, as we mentioned earlier. Now my Aquarius side gets to say, and which of these are going to give me the life that I want? Which of these speak to my authentic self? How do I negotiate and navigate? There might be something that I would like to take off the list but can't. But not everything on the list should be something that is painful or arduous. And how often does it happen that we wind up with, oh, these are my 10 top priorities? Well, no. Let's face it, in reality, there probably is 3 that we could have as true priorities that take our time, our energy, our money. If 3 is too hard to do, maybe we could go with 5. But I feel like this is the challenge, and this is the moment for clarity about it. This is the moment when our mind can wrap around what I want and what I need to do, and how do I bridge that? How do I navigate that? Often by letting some things go, right? Or taking something on. Now I can really say, now my plan is revised. It's ready to go. I can live this. This is a livable plan for the year. So
I like that.
That's what I'm throwing out there.
I like the exercise about 5 things that take your time and energy and 5 things that are a priority, because so often we think we put our time and energy into our goals, but we don't. The life takes over and suddenly we didn't achieve our goals that are important to us because of something else. So having that very practical approach, I really like that, Kimberly, to actually compare those 2. It shows you where your discrepancies are.
And the opposite can happen. I mean, part of my changing career path was because I realized I had so much time and energy and financial resources going into supporting a corporate life job, when my top priority was to be authentic and independent. And I'm not advocating that everyone make a major leap, but that awareness happening year after year was part of what allowed me to say, okay, this is where something needs to change.
Yeah.
So I think it's, if we're going to be happy, there needs to be some harmony between what we want to do and what we need to do. And yes, that's just an easy, practical way of seeing what I actually choose to do. And what about you?
Well, I think I'm going to focus a bit on that major shift of the nodes into other signs, because that's a collective one that's kind of bigger frame, like where can I let go of things, what are the things that I need to transform energy wise until more concrete stuff that I can do. What do I want to take with me from the past 1.5 years, and what do I want to leave behind. Also to check which houses the nodes are going to transit or move through in my own chart the following 1.5 year, because that's going to be the area of life where I can also do some processing on a karmic level, on a deep level. And because they are in Scorpio and Taurus, which are also signs where I have planets, and if you have signs in other fixed planets in other fixed signs like Aquarius or Leo, then you might be more feel them more, the process of these nodes. So you can check that out in your chart and think about those areas of your life for the coming 1.5 years.
Awesome. Well, I can tell I got my homework because I like both of your ideas. I think I'm going to try them all.
Well, we're here to learn from one another and to inspire one another as well.
Absolutely. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast. It certainly was a lot happening with this full moon and the 2-week cycle of the waning. moon. So we'll join you again in 2 weeks on the next new moon in February. Until then, be safe, be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this week's Astro Chat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.